With the new iPhone SE 3rd generation having been out for about a month now, the iPhone lineup stands about as diverse as it's ever been, with a phone for any price point, within the range of about $1,000 to just over $400. And while this was still the case with the last SE, this newer one is only $30 more, and naturally makes the device a more tempting option with the allure of a faster chipset and the benefits that come along with that. One of those benefits being 5G networking, even if it's not the super fast Wave 5G that's already within some cities. My previous conclusion for the old SE was that it wasn't worth buying purely because the iPhone 11 was significantly better for only $100 more. And for my review on the 3rd gen SE that just came out, this was still my opinion. But the situation is a bit different. The iPhone 11 is no longer better in all aspects. Before, the phones shared the same processor, and thus it made the 11 the easy choice. But technically speaking, the SE is the faster device and will likely last another year or two over the 11 in the long run for updates. The problem is that the SE3 didn't do much more than improving the chipset, and so a lot of the benefits going with the larger iPhone 11 still apply here. I would still recommend the iPhone 11 for the vast majority of people looking to buy one of the cheaper iPhones, and in this video we'll be comparing the two devices to find out exactly why that is. Timestamps, as always, are in the description below if you would like to skip ahead. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and these two iPhones are the ones many people will be looking at for their next purchase, at least until the iPhone 11 is discontinued, which probably will be this coming fall. Even so, this comparison should still apply, as the camera quality and performance won't be changing, and the fact of the matter is a used iPhone 11 within a year from now will likely be about half the price of a brand new SE, which could be a very tempting option if you're looking to save some cash and get what is, at least in my opinion, the better phone. Why is it the better phone? Well, that can be explained quite easily. Battery life, camera quality, and larger display. All three of these factors are huge for most people when it comes to buying a smartphone in today's world, and the SE doesn't compare in any of them. Some might prefer the small size, but for those who really do and have a bit more money to spend, they can always go up to the iPhone 12 or 13 mini, which would be a significantly better valued option for only at minimum a couple $100 more. Sure, that's approximately a 33% price increase, but facts are the SE3 just doesn't represent very good value except in one specific sense, and that's the power. And we'll start with what is better than the iPhone 11 with the SE and move into the rest of the comparisons. But just before that, we do have a quick word from today's sponsor. Whoa, Cola, are you browsing the web? You are aware that your internet service provider can track and see everything you're looking at, right? And they can even throttle the speeds that you're paying for? Not to mention the websites you visit can pinpoint your location?
Of course I'm aware, puny human. That is why I am using a virtual private network.
Whoa, would you be using NordVPN, the fastest VPN on the market that I've been personally using for years now?
Well,
is it true that NordVPN gives you access to over 5,200 servers in 60 countries on their easy-to-use app for every platform imaginable? And is available to download today at nordvpn.com/91tech, which just so happens to be the top link below?
Top link below? What are you talking about?
And if you're searching the web using public Wi-Fi like at Starbucks, a VPN is essential? As insecure networks can leave you open to a number of vulnerabilities from nearby hackers?
Are these rhetorical questions, or what's going on?
Perhaps you're even using Nord to stream region-locked media like on Netflix that normally you wouldn't be able to access in your country?
Would you shut up and let me talk, pathetic mortal?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, Cola.
It's just you kept going on and on and on.
I just really like NordVPN.
I can tell. Seems kind of weird.
You're a talking dog.
Which is partly why I'm using NordVPN. It turns out navigating the web is difficult enough with these darn paws. But luckily, with Nord's threat protection, it keeps me away from dangerous websites, trackers, intrusive and malicious ads, and malware. It keeps my internet both private and safe, which is essential for a positive online experience.
Wow, NordVPN sure sounds great. Anyone who is listening in on this for some reason should go to nordvpn.com/91tech, which would no doubt be the first link in the description to get a special offer to set them up and keep them safe online.
Hey, did you not get my joke?
You mean the positive thing?
Yeah, because like I'm a dog and I have paws.
No, I get it. Bit of a rough pun though.
Because I'm a dog. That was pretty good. I'm gonna go poop on your bed now.
Huge thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. It's a great service. I mean, I've been using them way before they ever sponsored me, so definitely give it a shot. Top link in the description if you're interested. But back to the subject on hand, let's talk about performance. This is the one big area that the iPhone SE is undoubtedly superior to the iPhone 11. The iPhone 11 has Apple's 2019 A13 chipset, whereas the iPhone SE has Apple's 2021 A15 chipset. They both have 4 GB of RAM. The A15 is only a couple generations newer, newer, but Apple has been crazy fast when it comes to progressing with their own processors and making leaps in technical prowess, which allows the phone to do more and do it faster. And of course, we have 5G networking. I'm not going to talk too much about this because honestly, if you were in an area with Wave 5G, well, the SE can't do that. I think for most people, the iPhone 11 with 4G LTE will still be plenty fine. While we aren't talking about the camera quite yet, it is probably the best example of what the SE has over the iPhone 11 in terms of how the A15 can make a real difference. You've got a lot of improvements to the camera quality despite not actually changing the physical camera itself. You've got photographic styles, better high dynamic range, and what Apple calls deep fusion image processing. Obviously, there's a lot of marketing terms involved, but the newer chipset does give the SE more headroom to process pictures to make them look better. And as we'll see a little later, it even results in some photos being slightly better on the SE than the 11, even if that's not the norm. And it isn't the norm. This is all with an objectively worse camera lens, as the sensor is physically smaller, allowing for less light, so it does go to show how impressive Apple's hardware keeps getting internally. But just to be clear here, the iPhone 11 is definitely superior with the camera, especially because of night mode, but we'll get to all that. For performance, benchmarks are kind of meaningless for real life use, but if you look around, you'll probably see an increase in performance from around 25 to maybe 35% better, going to the A15 from the A13. That is significant, but again, real life use is what matters, and the truth is both of these phones are blazing fast. You shouldn't experience much, if any, lag on the iPhone 11 yet, assuming the battery is in good health, and I would expect this to continue to be the case as iOS 16 is rolled out this fall. That being said, while performance shouldn't show much difference today, give it even just a couple years and you'll have the SE right now where the 11 is today, and the 11 will likely be where the iPhone 10 or 8 Plus is right now. That's not a bad thing, and neither the 10 or 8 Plus are slow by any means, but newer does mean an experience that feels faster for longer. For iOS updates, neither phone needs to worry about this yet whatsoever. Apple gives a ridiculous amount of updates, so I would expect at least 5 years minimum for the iPhone SE, and if that was the case for the iPhone 11, that would still give you roughly another 3 years of updates, but that is a bit of a conservative estimate with how long iPhones with much less impressive hardware have lasted recently in the iPhone 6s and even the first iPhone SE, which both run on late 2015 hardware. Yeah, these run the same iOS version as the best iPhone right now, so that's pretty crazy. I think what I'm trying to say is while the A15 is really good and it's big for the SE to have it, it shouldn't be by any means the main factor for those torn between this phone or the 11. Both are very fast and will stay that way more likely than not for the entire duration of how long you'll actually be using the phone. I mean, unless you're like my grandfather, who is still currently using an iPhone 5S almost 9 years after the 5S came out. No replacement battery there either. How he does it, I do not know, and yes, I've tried to get him to upgrade, but he's made that thing last, and it can still cover the basics for him, including his Tim Hortons app and banking stuff. I will get him on an iPhone SE at some point, especially because it is going to be the last home button iPhone. And speaking of the home button, this brings us into the biggest deciding factor of which phone you should buy, the design and the displays. If you look at these two phones, what's the most obvious difference? Well, one has a home button with Touch ID, the other has reduced bezels and a notch for Face ID. For many of us, no doubt watching this right now, and I kind of include myself here, a home button might seem like an aged, basically obsolete design element. It might be hard to see why anyone would have any interest in keeping that around. So you have to take into account a couple groups of people that I talked about in my full SE3 review. Boomers, for one. Okay, that's a joke, I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. The first category is really just people who don't know anything more than what they've used for the past decade, and that's a home button. While the gesture system is pretty simple and intuitive, not everyone wants to have to learn a new way of navigation, and no matter which way you spin it, clicking the home button is going to be easier to remember than swiping up to go home. Think of your grandparents, and not even necessarily someone older, but those who just don't really care for the new stuff and like to keep things simple and easy. That's totally fair, right? Not everyone needs to have the coolest new tech out there, as long as it's solid and reliable, and this phone definitely is that. The SE is almost the perfect phone for this kind of person, and I'm not talking just the perfect iPhone, but honestly smartphone in general. I don't think there's any phone geared better towards this kind of person, at least to this high a quality. The second group are those who just don't care, particularly about the design. Maybe they see the iPhone SE as the cheapest iPhone and don't think twice about having a home button or not. Doesn't bother them, they just want a phone that gets the job done and does it well. The SE can certainly work for this type of person, but I also find that these people tend to still want high quality cameras and strong battery life. Two aspects where the iPhone 11 has the SE beat. And it's not like the SE has a terrible camera and a terrible battery, they have improved it thankfully, but I think for a lot of people they'd be more happy with the iPhone 11 11 in the long run. I don't think specifics are too necessary here, but the iPhone 11 has a 6.1-inch display, while the SE has 4.7 inches. And of course, the 11 is bigger, but it's not that much physically bigger, as it takes advantage of the surface area better by having the screen go edge to edge without the big bezels on the top and bottom. The resolutions are fairly irrelevant, as they result in the same pixel density on both devices, 326 pixels per inch. This is the standard Retina display we've been seeing for a very long time now. The screens on both phones are LCD, which is different from OLED, the type of screen on any iPhone above the 11, and one that produces much more vibrant colors along with true blacks. It's a better display, it looks better, but I do think the LCDs on these are still quite good and will do the job no problem for the type of person looking to buy one of the lower tier iPhones. And so ultimately it does come down to, do you like the home button or do you not? Are you okay with a slightly smaller display, or would you rather a big display and a home button? Well, if that's what you want, you're kind of stuck. They don't have any SE Plus like they used to have the 8 Plus, so it really is just iPhone 11 or SE. And again, I'm going to recommend the iPhone 11. Big reason is battery life. The battery is approximately 33% bigger than the one in the SE. And while that's not the only factor going into this, like the A15 is more efficient than what the 11 has, it is still quite a bit stronger. If you look at Apple's website and how they compare battery life, Apple claims that the iPhone 11 gets up to 17 hours video playback, while the SE gets up to 15 hours. The previous generation SE only got up to 13 hours. Now, these might not sound like big differences, but keep in mind, we're talking about video playback. That 2 hours can be extrapolated further, makes the battery life just more reliable in general, and most people I've talked to with the iPhone 11 love it. The iPhone SE3 has about an equivalent battery with the iPhone 12 mini. I've heard more mixed reports on that one. It is a smaller battery, right? So you're getting, again, just less battery life. Keep in mind, using 5G on the iPhone SE will cause battery to be used up quite fast. The 11 doesn't have 5G, so that can help it in longevity, though of course speeds are slower. Ultimately, the iPhone SE3 has definitely improved itself in the battery department, and I'm very glad for that, though the iPhone 11 will of course have it beat. Speaking of has it beat, let's move to really the final category, the cameras. Without even looking too closely, we can right away see where the iPhone 11 is better. It has two camera lenses. You've got the main 12 megapixel one, but then you've also got the ultra wide 12 megapixel camera. And the ultra wide on the iPhone 11 was Apple's first ultra wide, along with on the 11 Pro, so it's not great, but it is nice to have. Pictures from it, definitely not the highest quality, especially compared to their newer ultra wides, but again, it's just nice to have. It's nice to have that option. The SE doesn't have that. It just has the one wide lens, which is also 12 megapixels, but it's physically smaller. The camera sensor here is actually the exact same as the iPhone 8. The iPhone 8 that came out all the way back in 2017. Despite this, the pictures it takes are significantly better than the iPhone 8 thanks to the better processing power, especially now with the A15. And again, as mentioned earlier, in certain situations, even though by all accounts and purposes the iPhone 11 has a better camera, the SE can take a better photo. Maybe the HDR is a little bit better. Here you can really see the blue through the trees better, for example. Now where this is really obvious is how it actually carries over to video, which I was really not expecting. This is 4K 30 on both phones. I'm holding them both at the same time, so one is slightly higher than the other, but when I look at the sky, you can see how much better the iPhone SE does. At first I thought that the iPhone 11 simply wasn't focusing properly, so I kept looking down and looking back up very quickly to try to get it to autofocus better and we could see the blue in the sky, but it just wouldn't do that. The iPhone SE, on the other hand, consistently did it every time instantly. This does show us that the processing ability is significantly better, at least in this specific instance, and that's impressive. It's actually really impressive. I was surprised to see this. I think the iPhone SE's camera is maybe even a bit underrated, and I throw myself in there. I was definitely underrating it before this, but ultimately you're still getting the smaller sensor. So on average, while HDR might be better, photos should be better on the iPhone 11. A good example of this is any kind of photo taken in darker conditions, whether it be at night or not. We'll be going more in depth here, but selfie cameras, 7 megapixels on the SE3, 12 megapixels on the iPhone 11. The iPhone 11 is better in this department. I think the SE is probably fine for what it is, but the 11 is definitely the way to go if that's important to you. Where things get interesting is of course with regular photos, and while the SE can take occasionally some better photos, if you go into any lower light situation, that's where the iPhone 11 really pulls ahead. Again, it's got the bigger sensor, which means it pulls in more light. I mix that with the night mode, and it can literally be a night versus day situation in some of these cases. On the iPhone 11, it almost looks like I was using the flash, which I wasn't. Neither phone is using the flash. This is just taking a picture, no flash, night mode on the iPhone 11, nothing on the iPhone SE. And while you can see the bush on the iPhone SE, it looks horrible. Look anywhere on the image, it's blurry, it's smeary, it's grainy. It's what you would expect from a lower tier smartphone taking a low light photo. But the iPhone 11 takes a photo that, while not great, and a bit unrealistically lit, like it was absolutely darker than this in real life, but you can actually see what's going on, and it doesn't look that bad. There's a decent amount of detail here, and while it might not be nearly as good as newer iPhones or newer cameras in general, it is so far beyond what the iPhone SE is capable of. And it does make me a little annoyed Apple just didn't put any kind of night mode onto the iPhone SE. I know the sensor is smaller, it can take in less light, but with the power of the A15, you'd really think they'd be able to pull off some software magic to at least improve things. And yet, well, you can't. So even if day conditions, sometimes the SE can outdo the 11, when it comes to lower light situations, the 11 is going to take the cake every single time. Now, obviously, this is very dark conditions, and these two photos are kind of extreme examples, but it also does apply on a lesser scale, taking photos even just inside, like these pictures of my dog. You can see, really, the iPhone 11 just does so much better. There's so much more detail. The iPhone SE with its software is trying to really just soften her fur up and stuff, so you don't see the noise and the grain so much, and it just looks really smeary and really bad. The iPhone 11 is not great, but it is much, much better. So in short here, the SE takes pretty decent photos outside in good lighting conditions, and it's even better with image processing and HDR, but the 11 is pretty much superior in every other possible way. For most situations, the 11 is going to take the better photo, and you also get that ultra wide lens, so if the camera's important to you, the 11 is definitely the way to go. Or even better, you get a better iPhone, because they keep getting better every single year, and while the 11 can take nice shots, and the SE definitely can too, the newer phone you get, the better shots it'll take. So that's probably enough for the camera quality for now, and this kind of brings us to the conclusion, or the summary if you will. What have we learned today? Well, probably not too much. You may have known a lot of this coming into the video, and while I was surprised by the camera quality on the SE was better than I expected, ultimately my opinion hasn't really changed here. The iPhone 11 is definitely better value. These phones both come with 64 gigabytes. The iPhone SE starts at $429. The iPhone 11 starts at $499. Now keep in mind, if you're going through a carrier or a contract or whatever, if you're upgrading through your current plan, you probably aren't paying that price straight up. Whichever phone you go for, if you are between these two phones, I don't think you'll have regrets. They're hard ones to compare in a way because they're so different looking, and the iPhone SE does have that huge advantage with the A15. It's kind of like Apple was just so close to making the SE almost this perfect budget phone. The design really makes it look like it could be kind of this ultimate budget option for someone who wants an iPhone, doesn't want to pay a ton of money for it, and doesn't care too much about the bigger screen and whatnot. But pricing it at $429, it doesn't work here in my opinion. It's too expensive for what you're getting. Yes, the A15 is extremely impressive, but I would have rathered keep the A13 and go down to $300 or $250. Mind you, that phone didn't have 5G, and Apple definitely wanted to add that. At the end of the year, the iPhone 11 won't be around, and then at this point, all iPhones will have 5G. I'm sure that's part of their plan. The SE3 looks like such a good phone, just a bit too expensive. The iPhone 11 at $500, I said it before earlier this year, I'll say it again, I think that's great value. People buying a lower to mid-tier iPhone generally don't care about having the top of the line screen and all this kind of stuff. They want a good camera, they want reliable performance, and the iPhone 11 definitely has both of those things, especially on the performance side. Apple is just nuts, and with updates, you're getting a long time. Android phones are lucky to get more than 2 years. And so let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm very curious on this one. When I was doing my iPhone SE3 review, some people just were trashing on the phone in the comments. Some people were saying that they loved their SE2 and they're going to upgrade to the SE3 because they loved the design so much and all this. And honestly, I like hearing both sides, even if you disagree with me. I think it's really important to look especially at real life usage. I think most people will be happy with either of these phones. They're both fast, they're both good at what they do, and that's what matters at the end of the day, right? Who cares how it looks if it does the same thing? And my iPhone 13 Pro, as fancy as it is with its 3 cameras on the back, well, ultimately it still runs the same software and pretty much does the same thing as this iPhone SE 3rd generation, and about just as fast too with the chipset. So I think I'm right about done here. Again, big thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. It is a huge help to the channel, and thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully this helped, or you found it interesting, and if so, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content similar to this. You can follow me at 91_tech if you'd like to for some reason, and with that all being said, thank you again for watching. I'm Josh from 91tech, and I will see you all next time.